Officer of YPO, and I'm thrilled to share with you tonight the Global Pulse results, which we'll walk through in just a moment. But first, a little bit about YPO. Some people online or otherwise just may not be so familiar with YPO. We're a 70-year-old institution founded on peer-to-peer learning. That's it. We were founded in 1950 in the United States before there was business education. So when everybody after the World War was starting businesses and doing different things, there was no place to get support for what they were doing in their businesses. So they formed a peer-to-peer network. And the idea was to get people who actually are running businesses at a young age together, because that energy, that success early creates a why not kind of spirit. That success early creates a confidence that says you can accomplish things. And that success early means we need to feed it so that it can continue to grow. So at this point, we're 29,000 members in 134 countries. We are running the whole gamut of different opportunities. We do more than 6,000 events a year within YPO. We have 44 online networks. We connect people through their families, through their businesses, through their personal interests, and we recognize that leadership is a whole person experience. So in that setting, that's the organization of which we are, and we have 465 chapters around the world as well where people engage, and it's just a very vibrant, dynamic organization. And what better organization to ask questions of based on the global nature of what it is? So we've been listening today about all the disruption and changes of things that are happening in technology, in geopolitical situations. The evolution of our customers, because of what they're looking for and what they value, is changing. This idea that equality is very common in our conversation, and that is a big disruption that's happening in terms of how people actually drive to better outcomes. And there's a crisis of trust. All of the cyber security, the leaks that have been happening of information, the brand loyalties that are declining that we see as time goes, all of that's happening. At the same time, the CEO, the leader, the managing director, is also facing a time to figure out how to adjust their businesses in that environment, at the same time that the idea that we're serving more than our shareholders is growing bigger and bigger. We have to be more than our profit and loss statement, more than our future deployment of assets. We have to be about serving multiple stakeholders. And the serving of multiple stakeholders, all the different pressure, all the tools of how we learn how to do that, along with all of these disruptions, is creating a great amount of pressure on the leader. CEO turnover has never been higher, and it's in part contributed to the devolution of trust that has happened. When people break trust, they have been turning over CEOs as a result of that. So in that environment, we recognize that we should check out to say, what's in the mind of the leader? What does the leader need to do? There are many other trust studies that are out there, and that's fantastic, because trust is trust, and it's one of the core elements of what we have in many of our organization principles in terms of what we say. But YPO is focused on what the leader can do. Because business can make a world a better place. Everything on the planet's paid for by business, ultimately. Business and commerce pays for everything. And that puts a great burden on business leaders to do great things, especially now in this time of change. So with that, we've got a survey that's got almost 3,000 respondents from 115 countries. So we're able to actually draw some meaningful conclusions, not just about a single country's CEOs, not just about the Fortune 500 CEOs or the Global 2000 CEOs, but actually a broader swag of what the CEOs are out there and what's on their minds and what are they facing. So first of all, we all recognize trust is important. CEOs say trust is important. And more than 42% of CEOs responding said it's become more important in the last 5 years than it was before that. So we're sensing this great pressure into trust. What's interesting is a gap. We're business people, we know. If something's important, we build plans around it. We build metrics. We build KPIs because it's important. Barely 1/3 of CEOs have a plan to build trust in their organizations. Less than 1/3, I mean. And 1/3 2/3 don't even measure trust. So here we have where almost 100% of CEOs say something's important. It's becoming more important, and there's no plan There's no plans or initiatives to build their trust as they go forward. That's a big aha for us as to what we need to be focusing on with people as we go forward. So the CEOs tell us we're struggling to take this trust that we care about into action. Not only do we not have a plan for it generally, but we also are struggling to figure out how to put it into action. 40%, just 40% think building trust with employees is easy. And one would think that the employees that report to the leader, that would be the easiest group to get aligned. But no, the CEOs are saying that senior leaders are easier. That makes sense. That's a C-suite. You see them frequently. Okay, I get the fact that building trust with them would be easier. But vendors and suppliers and investors and shareholders are easier to build trust with than your employees and your customers. That's really quite striking relative to the role of what we say is most important in our businesses and most important about what we're trying to do with our brands and most important with what we're trying to represent as we take our leadership forward. And we're feeling pressure. 9 out of 10 CEOs really feel that pressure that I was alluding to earlier, that I need to embody my organization's values through my actions. I need to be transparent about business decisions. That makes sense. Everybody here's walk the talk sometimes. That's very much we feel that as leaders as we take that. But then when you look further, you got just about 3/4 are feeling this pressure to take the lead on change and also to ensure their employees have a voice in the business. Big change is happening, as you've probably talked about in other places, with generational shifts and expectations of workers and their participation in the leadership in their organization. But look way down at the bottom, where barely 1/4 of CEOs feel that they don't feel pressure to speak out on social issues. And it's interesting when we talk about embodying values and being transparent, and at the same time, CEOs are thinkers and they're people. They're the desire to be authentic, and yet on behalf of their employees and everybody else, there's certain things they're leaving unsaid and untouched. So the CEOs, we ask them, what are the most important actions to take? Crazy thoughts, but communication's number one. Okay, it seems like every issue, communication is somehow number one. But the fact is that communication is a tactic that works well. Being transparent and honest, gathering feedback and listening, and you can see the chart here, and really going down through the rest. You can see set a good example and have a clear mission and purpose. Strangely enough, was the least cited trust builder as we take a look to that. All of those points, though, begin to touch on what we at YPO have found it to be the 7 success attributes for the leaders we build forward. YPO has been building a focus about what we need to do in the 21st century, what leaders need to do in the 21st century. And these aren't ranked in any kind of order 1 to 7. We just numbered them because they're 7. But you'll see that authenticity and transparency is absolutely critical for the leader. If none of us control the information about our organizations, all of us have different eyes and different perspectives and different data available to other people that's not available to us as the CEOs of the organization. And we need to be transparent about the fact that we're not in control with as much, and we're trying to work through as much as we possibly can. But at the time, it's very, very disorienting as a shift begins to happen about what that actually feels like when you don't have as much control as you thought you did. And you might be in charge, but other people's perceptions are much more in charge than you're in charge. And it's becoming very clear to us in YPO as we start orienting our leaders to be the very successful leaders as we go forward. I think at this point it's worthy to touch on, now these are not survey-driven things, these are YPO-driven points at this aspect, but understanding what the 6 other attributes of that CEO, the leader, is. Of course, we need to be competent, and of course, we need to be honest, and of course, you need to have the skills in order to do the role. But what are the inflection skills that are actually going to drive success? You have to thrive on purpose and impact. You absolutely have to. And we see that in all of the conversation that's been happening here today about the enthusiasm about the topics, but also about the fact that if we aren't committed to and show the values of committing to purpose and impact, and our employees are, it's very difficult to get trusted because there's not a value alignment. And if you think that your customers' employees aren't driven by the same kind of purpose and impact that your employees are seeking, you're going to see a value disalignment. And if you think that all longer run about what it takes to hire people and what it takes to be in the growth space, people have to align their values with what it is that you're doing. So that commitment to purpose and impact, a big purpose and impact, is a critical driver. Of course, we know technology is integrating into everything that we do. That's not a news headline. And thinking globally, we know how connected the world is together. Data, ecosystems, supply chains, customer systems, and information flows are all interconnected, and we need to think about the globe, about how it's intertwined, and then also act where we can to make our fit within all of that. And people are holistic now. It's not just about work. David Rubenstein was up here earlier, said one of his hiring attributes is you have to work hard. Absolutely. Absolutely, and work hard for the right purpose and the right cause, and then be holistic about what that means in your life and how you fit those together with the family and the loved ones and everything that you care about. That's critical. Other studies show that the meaning that people get, the biggest meaning in their lives, guess what, is not work. It's their families and their loved ones. The way that their families and loved ones view them is incredibly critical. So while I get in front of my employees at YPO and I talk about how important our YPO initiatives are, I have to do that knowing that the most important thing in the lives of the people I'm talking to are their loved ones. And I have to know that there has to be some balance in how we accomplish our organization mission while they accomplish their life mission and life care. The leader of the future has cognizance of that and can actually work with that in their situations. And of course, being agile, we all have to lead through fast and continuous change. It doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. So the fact is we need to accomplish not just change management, but commitment management through change in many cases as we go forward with that. And then the era of the laptop CEO, sitting on a 10-hour plane ride, typing out emails, telling dictates in terms of what people have to do and how they have to do it, that's not the role of the CEO. The CEO now is to do exactly what you're doing here at Davos. Connect outside your organization, get filled with some big thoughts, talk to people about what they're doing, think about whether or not what they're doing could apply to your situation, and start connecting different dots together, asynchronous dots, as Brad Keywell was sharing just earlier, so that we can actually create different innovation for our organizations. That's the role of the CEO in the biggest way, beyond being the model for the future of the organization. So this is what YPO is orienting to. This is the kind of people that we attract most, and this is actually the premise and fits perfectly within this world of trust as we go forward. So as we distill down the tactics that I shared earlier of building trust, 2/3 of those respondents don't have plans on trust and everything else, so we've created a shorter list for you as you go forward. First, celebrate and align your organization behind its higher purpose. One of our members said, you pour champagne on something and it grows. And I think that's a perfect perspective to things. Have that higher purpose, align everybody around that higher purpose, because people thrive on purpose and impact. People will motivate for purpose and impact. People will work hard for purpose and impact. And people will feel good about purpose and impact and will be proud to tell their kids and families where they work and where they're making a difference. Second is lead and live by authentic and transparent example. I happen to work in a member association, got 29,000 customers, get 10,000 volunteers, and all of those are wonderful CEOs, okay? Most of them think they can run the organization better than I can, and they may be right, but at the same time, they look at the organization through different lenses than I may see it, and they have access to different information about the organization than I may see it. As such, I have to be very humble about standing up and really never being totally sure I have everything locked in and loaded and feeling perfect about things, because in every big organization there's always things that are dissonant, are not perfect, and you to stand up and think you have control of it and stand up and think you have a lock on the information and the perceptions of others is a huge mistake. So all I can do and all the leader can ultimately do to be successful, I think, is to live by that authenticness. I don't have this figured out, but here's what we're doing. Or we're figuring this out, and here's what we're doing. There's different messages about ways to convey that, but showing that authenticity makes it easier for your employees to see if you have the same values they do. Makes it easy to stand up and recognize who you are and who they want to be. makes it easy for people to know if you actually are the brand statement or you're shimmying up a brand for that's not really true and real. So in that sense, doing that is particularly meaningful to the extent you can do that and as we go. And there's a lot of talk about CEOs speaking out on social issues. And we saw that our CEOs didn't feel necessarily that pressure, but externally, and certainly across Davos this week, you're hearing about how CEOs should be talking much more on social issues and taking stands and showing business leading and everything else. And that may be true, and I think that's a worthy conversation, which we'll be touching on with Richard Edelman, with Edelman Trust Monitor on Friday morning here. So that's another deeper exploration that we can touch on. But what could be more authentic if the CEO can find areas where they can speak out and show that their true feelings on behalf of the organization that reflects what the organization believes, the employees believe, and taking those stands can actually build trust as opposed to destroy trust and opportunity. Then you nurture trust-enhancing operations. Terribly worded, sorry, they're my words, but the point is that no CEO, while leadership happens from the top, no CEO sits in every single meeting room. No CEO, we have to work through other people. So how are we scaling trust across the organization? What do the small group meetings look like? Other than, we all want shorter meetings, fewer meetings, more efficient meetings. I think we also want the kind of meetings that build more trust, more consistency to the brand, and more commitment to what the organization is all about. YPO has spent an incredible amount of time in small group engagement to build trust and scale trust. The Kellogg Innovation Network came and studied YPO and said that, and concluded, when they were looking at innovation networks, actually concluded that nobody scales trust faster than YPO. And that's something to be proud of in our standpoint, but it's not a competing point. The main point is that there are certain tactics you can encourage throughout your organization in order to drive more trust among your teammates so that they can drive more trust with your vendors and your suppliers and your contractors and your stakeholders and customers and everybody else. And it's just a matter of people showing up authentically and showing up as people is part of the overall purpose and effort. And then making trust the foundation of your business and brand. I was going to start with a challenge, but I didn't want to be too provocative, but something you may want to think about. Do people trust you? Do your employees trust you? I know you think they do.
Most of the time.
Okay, yeah. Do people trust your company?
Most of the time.
Okay, and do people trust your brand? And then are they increasing or decreasing? I think if you look inside yourself and you think about what is that trust? After all, what is trust? We've been talking about trust. PwC's got a study on trust. EY's got a study on trust. The Edelman Trust Barometer has a study on trust. And what is trust? Trust is the belief that someone or something is going to be reliable and true. Someone or something is going to be reliable and true. So in that sense, when people look at your leadership, they look at your business, they look at what you represent, they look at what you say you represent, they look at your actions. Are they reliable and are they true? That's the trick in this environment. We all know we should be trusted. We all know we believe in integrity. We all know that we want to work with people that share our own values. That we learn that at a very early age in whatever culture we've grown up in. But at this day and age, when everybody's talking about the change, we need to make sure that we're talking about the things that shouldn't be changing but need attention. And with YPO and with all of us and with your attention here, clearly it's because we have trust issues and we have trust work to do, and we challenge the leader to engage. We have the entire report and a whole series, 80 pages worth, of some YPO trust guidelines that we've learned over 70 years about how to build trust in different kinds of ways. We're going to continue this trust conversation and trust improvement as our own leadership development. We're challenging ourselves to become better leaders. It's the mission of YPO, better leaders through lifelong learning and idea exchange. We're going on this trust journey. We're committed to it. And we're also thrilled to be able to share it with all of you as we go forward, because business is the path ahead. And business enthusiasm, and Brad Keywell said it, entrepreneurs are the role of the entrepreneurs to break through the status quo. And trust is part of that in terms of how they scale their breakthroughs. So with that, we're committed to that with you. So I'd encourage you to take that. We have some limited hard copies of the report itself, as well as this web link downstairs. We encourage you to take those if you're interested in that. And we just really appreciate you all being here. And we'll pause for a little time. If there are any questions about the research or about YPO, this would be a good time to field them if anybody has any. But thank you again for being here. Have any questions? Yes?
I've got a question. Great chat, so thank you for that. It was really, really good, very, very informative. Follow on maybe from the first big aha moment you had there earlier in the slide deck was that all CEOs recognize the need to be trusted, but then like not a lot of them do anything about it, actively do anything about it. Could you give us some other examples of other blind spots? Because that's like a clear blind spot, right? It's like, oh, I totally understand trust, but oh, I'm not doing anything about it. Were there any other blind spots that the survey kind of pulled out to you?
Thank you for the question. In this survey, we were targeting really a view toward trust and where people lined up on how they're committing for impact through their leadership. So I don't have blind spots coming out of the data of the survey. I think you'll see that from us in some other areas as well. The biggest blind spot that keeps coming up to me, though, it's in the data a little bit. It's a bit of an extrapolation, goes down to communication. Okay, I think I'm the world's greatest communicator, okay? And I feel like I've told somebody something a long time ago and I just don't know why they don't remember it and all the rest of that stuff. And so with that, people need to be communicated with more often. And in YPO, one of my biggest learning lessons, again, anecdotally extrapolating from the communication on the top of the tactic, was people do what they want to do. And I'm working with volunteers and they're CEOs, and they're very thoughtful people. And I may be thinking about something 24/7 because that's what leaders and entrepreneurs and everybody do. But that doesn't mean the people that we're arranging and getting together on a particular topic are. So I've come to this conclusion: I have to earn consensus on direction and topic almost every single day, which means I've got to be willing to go back, make sure everybody's commonly oriented toward what we're doing, and then move forward. So it's quite often, it's not as linear of a communication life as I would like it to be, even though it is in my mind, but aligning people individually in small groups, because every organization, no matter how big, it works through small groups, ends up having to earn that consensus. So it comes back to the communication. It's a perpetual blind spot since the founding of YPO, long before that, I'm certain. But thanks for the question. Any other questions? Yes? They'll get you a microphone.
Thank you. I run an international organization, former YPO member myself, and we're working across 30 countries, lots of different cultures, and we're all about trust. We work in peace building, which is all building peace is all about building trust. And one of the challenges that we found is distance, physical distance, is that it's quite easy to build trust in smaller groups when you're physically present. And often what ends up happening over time is that groups that are co-located will build trust with each other vis-a-vis the other entities within the organization. So you get those kind of pockets of trust, which are intense because they're not the other kind of dynamic. So the question for the CEO, in my case, in this scenario, to what extent is it the CEO who has to be present building trust with each part of the house versus running that trust through their various deputies and their deputies and their deputies in a cascading way? Right. To what extent does a CEO need to be themselves present and at the coal front with the employees in such a scenario? What came out in that sense?
Well, first of all, in-person communication is the best, right? If 80% of communication is nonverbal, then certainly being in person is actually really, really good in terms of building trust and building that full communication and engagement. As people do get more remote, though, there are tactics you can take that don't make that diminishing trust from the virtualness decline nearly as fast as you would think. And some of these tactics of how you engage people and get people to show up as people, whether you're talking to each other through an iPad or you're talking in other ways, the fact is that there are some tactics you can use in interpersonal engagement which actually nurture trust. Most trust gets built personally, though, okay, and then you can nurture it and you can continue on in interpersonal way. For the leader, though, no leader, find a 1,000-employee organization where the leader knows the names of all 1,000 people, and if the leader was actually going down and meeting all of those people, there's just no way. But the leader engages with a certain group of people, and then what they take on and what they embody as the organization, how do they carry that with the people that they carry to, and the whole pyramiding and scaling of interactions. And it's not just a pyramid anymore, it's matrix and all the way and across. But the idea is that scaling protocols so that people actually engage in some of the same way, the core values of what trust and integrity and what we stand for really matters. That common cause matters a lot, because when you start to get lost, you bring everybody back to the common cause, and people fall back in line again. And so there are some tactics associated with that, and I think that's part of the perpetual study of leadership, which is really a really fun one for me personally. Yeah, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that. I think sometimes trust has less with who you are and more to do with who they are and understanding your audience. And the more you have that connection with people and you understand where they're coming from and where their passions are and where your commitments line up, then you're able to accelerate that trust.
I couldn't agree with that more. And it takes two to show up. And so if you're coming to, or I'm coming to a situation with you particularly as an example, and I have I got all these hang-ups. I just don't trust people, and I got burned by my last boss, and it's just every time somebody talks about profit, somehow I know I'm getting jammed on pay. Whatever my preconceived bias is, I can come to the situation with that, and you cannot mean any of that in your engagement with me, and you can be fully authentic. And I can have these hang-ups. And actually, it takes time, but you can begin to explore that if you're treating me as an individual, and I'm beginning to realize you're not trying to cut my legs out from under me. You're just reminding me of your intention, reminding me of our common cause together and how this kind of fits together and how I fit into the program. I can get more comfortable situationally based on the alignment tactics that a leader can do, and I can begin to break down some of those biases. There's no way you break them all down. We all have hang-ups, we all have stuff, and if we spent time on that, nothing would get done, right? So the fact is, it's a complicating factor. Any other questions? Well, fantastic. I'm thrilled you would come, and thank you very much. Enjoy the report, and if you have any questions in any which way, please reach out to me, or we have our past chairman, Pascal Jerkin. We have a bunch of members here in the room. We have Tassos Economou here, our chairman coming in. We'll meet him more during the week, and we'd love to engage with you in any which way we can and help your leadership journey and really help make the world a better place. So thank you.
Well, this ends on second day. Thank you so much for being here. It's all about trust in YPO, as you know. And we invite you to come down and enjoy the drinks and keep on mingling. It's amazing to figure out how the community of YPO is growing. When we came here last year, we estimated to 100, 150, and we keep having member entering the space, and I was in a lunch with the Deputy Prime Minister of Vietnam, figuring out that there were a series of YPOs that were there. Are you there? Are you in Promenade? So please keep on creating the buzz, reach the peers, because we're truly building the blocks of having an amazing community that can really become a strong group as we get together, engaged, and become more prominent in Davos. Thank you so much.